On this special shortened edition of the Locked On Kings podcast. No commercials, no ad reads, just my final thoughts as we are now just hours away from the start of the NBA draft. What do I think the Sacramento Kings should and will do on draft night? It's all right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into this special shortened, mini edition of the Locked On Kings podcast. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a sports producer and reporter here at ABC 10 News in Sacramento. And I'm so thankful that this day is finally here. Not that I want to get the day over with. I'm savoring what this draft is going to be, the drama around this draft. And I've had an absolute blast over the last month, really since we found out on draft lottery night that the Kings got the 4th overall pick to today. The amount of content that I've been able to put out on Locked On Kings, the amount of interactions, the great guests that I've had on, all the phenomenal conversations with those guests and with you Locked On Kings listeners, other Kings fans, fans of other teams who have tuned in. I talked to a lot of Pistons fans, talked to a lot of Pacers fans, talked to a lot of Knicks and Wizards fans who have started listening to the Locked On Kings podcast over this stretch to get an idea of what we think the Sacramento Kings could, should, and will do. It's been an incredible ride, and I'm very thankful for every single day, but I'm very glad that this day is finally here. And I'm very glad that by the end of today, we will have a pick or a trade. We will have something, a decision from Kings general manager Monte McNair that we can dissect, right? And believe me, here on Locked On Kings, every single move that Monte McNair and the Kings front office makes for the remainder of this offseason is going to be picked apart maliciously because those are the stakes. That's how high the stakes are for the Kings. We know they have a win now mandate. We know that Monte McNair has not signed a contract extension, although I don't believe, based off of my understanding, the conversations that I have had, Monte McNair's not in any kind of major hot water, but he still doesn't have a contract extension, so that's significant. We know that the Kings have 2 years to play better and win games to convince Domantas Sabonis to stay here and not just walk, so they didn't just trade Tyrese Halliburton for nothing. It all falls on what the Kings do on draft night tonight. I truly believe that if the Kings screw this up, their playoff drought that is at 16 years will reach 2 decades, talking 20 plus years. I really, truly believe that, even though it was not Monte McNair's front office that royally screwed up the 2018 draft by taking Marvin Bagley over Luka Doncic. That was Vlade Divac in the old regime. Still, Monte cannot botch another opportunity that has fallen right into his lap with the number 4 pick suddenly being available to the Sacramento Kings. So we've talked so much about what the Kings should do, could do with this number 4 pick. I've made it very well known how much I love Keegan Murray out of Iowa, how much I think Keegan Murray would be an excellent pick for the Sacramento Kings, be an excellent fit for the Sacramento Kings. And believe me, if the Kings leave draft night tonight and Keegan Murray is wearing a Kings draft hat and is a member of the Sacramento Kings going forward, I'm going to be a very, very happy camper. But that does not mean that I won't have concerns and I won't have questions. There are concerns and questions with every single player in this draft. That includes the top of the draft, Jabari Smith Jr. There's no chance he's fallen to the Kings. If he did, I'd still have questions about certain elements of his game. No rookie in this class, really rarely any rookie ever comes into the league without question marks and concerns, especially for a team like the Sacramento Kings, who notoriously struggles to maximize and develop young talent. I stand by everything I've said over the last month. I love the idea of Keegan Murray in Sacramento. I would be thrilled if Keegan Murray was the pick. But as of now, draft day, I don't think he is going to be the Kings pick. And if I were in Monty's shoes at this point, he would not be my pick. Jaden Ivey would be. Yep, you heard it right. Those of you who have been listening and know that I've been preaching Keegan Murray over Jaden Ivey, I'm telling you, if I were in Monty McNair's shoes right now, Jaden Ivey would be my pick tonight, unless I was able to move the pick. Here's how I think tonight is going to go. I think Monty McNair and the Kings, they already have let's say a whiteboard full of offers. They've had conversation after conversation with, I'm sure, at least half the league. But let's say there's a deal from I would say the Pistons up there, but they just traded Jeremy Grant to the Portland Trailblazers for like a future first round pick that's actually the Milwaukee Bucks pick. I don't know. I mean, I know they're trying to open up some salary. Maybe they're trying to make a run at DeAndre Ayton, who's available. And the Kings have apparently been attached to DeAndre Ayton or have had interest in DeAndre Ayton. No idea how financially they'd be able to get that deal done, but that's a conversation for another time. But I imagine they have the Detroit Pistons on the board as the team that's at 5 who theoretically really, really likes Jaden Ivey. Maybe they made this Jeremy Grant pick because they're opening up a spot for Keegan Murray should the Kings take Jaden Ivey at 4. Maybe they're making this trade because they're confident that Jaden Ivey's going to be there at 5 and the Kings are going to pick Keegan Murray at 4 and they're not going to do a deal with the Kings. Regardless, there's this whiteboard, I'm sure, in the Kings draft room that is covered in deals from the Knicks, the Wizards, the Pacers, the Pistons, maybe a potential trade up deal, other teams that haven't really been talked about or reported. I think Monty is going to have those in his back pocket or in the back of his mind the entire night. And he is going to sit and he is going to wait as we will all sit and wait to see if the top 3 of this draft goes as we expect it to go. Some combination, some order of Jabari Smith Jr., Chet Holmgren, and Paolo Banchero. If any one of those 3 falls to the Kings at 4, you take that guy. No questions asked. Even if it's Paolo and there are concerns about his fit with Domantas Sabonis, you figure that out. If any one of those 3 slide, and I do think there is a chance, I'm not going to say it's probable, but I definitely think it's possible that a team like Oklahoma City takes Jaden Ivey at 2, who they're rumored to be very high on. It's also very possible that the Thunder, who like Jaden Ivey, could be in contact with the Sacramento Kings on draft night and say, hey, do you want to move up? You want to do it? You can get whatever guy that Orlando didn't pick. So all these options are still open. What I think is going to happen is that the top 3 are going to go as expected in whatever order they go, and the Sacramento Kings are going to be on the clock. They're going to have 5 minutes, and right there, Jaden Ivey and Keegan Murray are going to be available for them to take, as many of us, basically all of us, expect them to be in that position. The Kings are going to field phone calls and put out final phone calls, a final call for any better offers, and maybe the Kings revisit some offers, and who knows? Maybe they accept one. I don't think that Monty is going to find the deal that he wants. And I think that's okay. I believe the reports, and based off the conversations that I personally have had, I firmly believe that Monty McNair is just fine selecting a player at number 4, even if that player is his guy in Keegan Murray. But if Monty is going to see through this strategy, this reported strategy, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, that the Kings view this as a 4-player draft, that Jaden Ivey is that 4th guy. And there are multiple teams that want Jaden Ivey, including the Pistons, who are just 1 pick behind you. If they are not going to give you the offer that you want, and it is A-OK for Monty McNair to have a high asking price. Some people are calling it absurd. I don't care about their opinion. The Sacramento Kings are in a power position. They rarely are in those powerful positions. They need to exploit it as much as possible. If the Pistons or any team behind the Kings wants Jaden Ivey that bad, they have to pay for it. And you do not help them out by giving them a discount just because you're the Sacramento Kings and you want to get pennies on the dollar. That's not how Monty McNair is operating. I believe that for a fact. In fact, I know that is the case. Monty is just fine sticking to his guns. If he's going to budge, it's going to be marginal. And if he has to select a player at 4, he's going to select a player at 4. And if he does not get the deal that he wants, I think he has to follow through on his threat. I think he has to say, look, Pistons, I told you Jaden was not going to be there at 4. I told you he was not going to be there. And I'm following through. Even if the Sacramento Kings love Keegan Murray, and believe me, they love Keegan Murray. They like him for all the reasons that I like him. He fits well. He is an immediate impact player, does a lot of things well, and I think they view Keegan Murray the same way I view Keegan Murray, which is that his ceiling is not that much lower than Jaden Ivey's, that he can have just as good of a career as Jaden Ivey can and probably will have in the NBA. As much as they love Keegan Murray, as much as he could be the guy that they want, you pick probably Jaden Ivey in that spot. It would hurt me as a big Keegan Murray fan. It would hurt me, but I think it's the right move for the Sacramento Kings because just because they pick Jaden Ivey at 4 doesn't mean that they can't move on from him later on. And if he is as coveted by so many teams as these reports suggest, the Kings can let their 5 minutes tick away, select him on draft night, and look for a deal later on in the draft, or once free agency opens and sign and trade scenarios, or after that. You can move Jaden Ivey at any time if you want to. But if you draft him, there is obviously the upside of what he could be for the Sacramento Kings. I do believe that Jaden Ivey and De'Aaron Fox could work. I don't think it would be as seamless as Keegan Murray. In fact, I've said this before, and I mean it. If the Sacramento Kings were picking a rookie solely on helping them make the playoffs next year, I pick Keegan Murray. Keegan Murray, in my opinion, gives the Sacramento Kings a better chance of making the playoffs right away next season than Jaden Ivey does. I believe that. But it's more than that. Even if that's the main goal for the Sacramento Kings, it's more than that. I'm not saying that Jaden Ivey can't help the Kings make the playoffs. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying there would be significant things for the Kings to figure out. Obvious fit concerns. I think they could work them out, but are you going into a De'Aaron Fox, Tyrese Halliburton backcourt with those struggles all over again? They're legitimate questions to ask. I want Keegan Murray. My heart says Keegan Murray. My brain says that Jaden Ivey. And I think Monty's going to go with the brain over the heart here. At least that's how his track record has shown to this point. So, my final thoughts here on draft night. The Sacramento Kings are still open to trades. They're going to consider trades all the way down to the final second, and they are going to decide to take Jaden Ivey. That is my prediction. Part of me hopes I'm wrong and that they pick Keegan Murray. I would love the scenario of the Kings trading down to 5, getting an asset from the Pistons, and still taking Keegan Murray. That would be phenomenal. I love the idea of the Kings trading up to 2 and getting one of those top 3. I love the idea, love the scenario of one of the top 3 sliding to the Kings at 4. Regardless, I think it's going to be really difficult for Monty McNair and the Sacramento Kings to screw this up. They could get the pick wrong, or at least not as right as they could. Let's say they take Keegan Murray over Jaden Ivey. Jaden Ivey becomes a star. Keegan Murray becomes a solid player. That would sting to some people, right? You could have had this star, even though there's no guarantee that he would have become that star in Sacramento. You passed on him. You took Keegan Murray, who's a pretty solid player. That could be considered not the right decision, but you're still going to end up with a really solid player who I think helps you accomplish your goal of making the playoffs immediately. I really don't see a scenario unless Monty goes crazy and trades out of the draft completely using the number 4 pick to take a massive swing on a star. I don't see a scenario where the Kings don't get something right on draft night. I think tonight, regardless of if we get the guy that we want or not, there's going to be reasons to be happy. There are also, of course, going to be those fans that are, and I understand why you are this way. It's been 16 years of losing and a lot of bad drafts, so I understand why you're going to think it's going to fail regardless of what the Kings do. I get that. There are going to be naysayers no matter what the Sacramento Kings do tonight. I've seen them on both sides. But I truly believe that the Kings are going to be a significantly better team tonight than they are right now at the time of me recording this. And I believe that It's going to be a lot of fun for the remainder of the offseason, breaking down what the Kings do tonight and how they're going to add on top of it. I'll sneak this in too. If the Sacramento Kings work out a trade for John Collins, and it sounds like the Hawks are really trying to move John Collins before the draft itself, we know the Kings are interested. They're not making the number 4 pick available. If the Kings can find a way to trade for John Collins without moving the 4 pick, it probably takes Harrison Barnes and maybe a future first. I have no idea what that package looks like. I almost guarantee you the Kings are taking Jaden Ivey at that point, because so much of the appeal of drafting Keegan Murray is the fact that he fills such a major hole for you, a hole that John Collins comes in and plugs right away. At that point, you have your starting four solidified. Bring in Jaden Ivey and figure it the hell out. So that could change things. And who knows? Maybe that trade will happen before draft night. We'll have to wait and see. I will be out at the Golden One Center today covering this draft. There's a draft party happening out there. I know a lot of you Kings fans are going to be out there as well. Please let me know if you're going. Let me know if you're going. Let me know if you want to meet up. I would love to come by and say hi. It's been a long time since I've been able to interact with Locked On Kings listeners in person. So please let me know if you're going to be out there. You can reach me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. You can let me know in the YouTube comment section down below. And also, while you're there, share with me your final thoughts on the draft. Share with me your predictions on tonight. I think it's going to be a great night for the Sacramento Kings. I really, truly am, or do believe that. I have no idea what the trade's going to, or the trades, or the pick. I have no idea what the Sacramento Kings are going to do, and that's a good thing. I have no idea what Monty is thinking. That means he's doing it right. But in the end, I think it's going to be a good night for Sacramento, and I can't wait for it. Thank you again so much for your support in all of this draft buildup. Don't worry. Once the draft is over, we're not slowing down. Whole offseason worth of content. Like I said, we're going to be dissecting everything the Sacramento Kings do. The Locked On Podcast Network is doing a whole live draft show that I'm going to be a part of tonight. I will have a special Locked On Kings post-draft edition of the podcast coming later on tonight. I'm also working at ABC 10 tonight covering the draft, so I won't be able to get that podcast out maybe as quickly as I want to, but I hope you will still tune in and listen to that podcast, even if you have to go to bed and wait for the next day to hear it. I just appreciate your support and can't wait to have you join me on that post-draft edition, and then all throughout the remainder of this offseason into free agency, summer league, training camp, and beyond into next season. I'm having so much fun. I hope you are too. Thank you so much for your support, and I'll talk to you after the draft. Until then, my name is Matt George. You've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.